In this clip, we're going to continue adjusting our fire simulation. So in the last clip, we set up our very basic simulation and we sort of moved these circles into place where they would be on the engine. We can go ahead and press Alt-A to check out this simulation. So the next step is to actually attach this simulation to the moving drone so that this simulation follows along with the actual engines. And that will give us a really good idea of what this fire simulation is actually going to look like once it's following this animation. So let's jump to frame 1. And we'll go ahead and we'll make sure that all of these objects are selected. So we'll just hold Shift down and we'll go ahead and select the circle here. Probably easier to go to wireframe for this. And Shift select the smoke domain, and then finally Shift select the actual engine geometry. And then we'll just press Control P, and we're going to set parent to object. And when we do that, we can go ahead and press Alt A and take a look at the simulation to try to get an idea of what this is going to look like. And we can go ahead and find our drone here. So this is the simulation as it looks as it's following along with the drone. So one of the things that we're going to need to adjust to fix some of this sort of intersection that's happening between the engines is we're going to go ahead and adjust the actual domain area. So let's jump back to frame 1, press period to frame in on that object, and let's go ahead and with the domain selected, we'll just begin scaling it. So we'll press S and then Z to scale along the Z axis, and we'll position it right around here, S and then X, S and then Y to scale along the Y axis, and position it right around here. And I'll press Alt A to run that, and we can pause it and find the spaceship here. So this is what it looks like now that we've adjusted this domain. So the domain is really important in actually running this simulation. So you can see by actually sizing down this domain to really the proper size, we're able to get a good idea of what this simulation is actually going to look like. So already we're getting something that resembles sort of a jet engine exhaust here, which is what we want. So one of the things we can do, if let's say for example we didn't want this fire simulation to push so far out here, we could actually just bring this domain inward. Now obviously right now it looks like it's moving the entire simulation back, but it's actually just moving this domain back. So if we moved it to somewhere right around here, you'll notice that when we run the simulation again, this flame is going to stop right up on that new domain area. So if we press Alt A, run the simulation again, now you can see the size of that flame is much, much smaller, and it's not shooting out quite as far. And that's probably a size we're looking for, a little bit closer to that. We might push it out just a little bit more, run that simulation again, and take a look at that flame. So something right around there looks pretty good. We want a pretty subtle fire simulation. We don't want to have a giant fire trail, extending all the way back behind the drone. We want a very tight flame happening that's flickering just on the back of this engine. So now that we've done that, let's take a look at some of the properties that we have over here in the physics tab. So one of the things that we want to adjust is this resolution. So this resolution comes in really important with actually adjusting the overall look of this flame simulation. So obviously a higher division level means you'll have more resolution in your actual fire, which means you'll have better looking fire. So if we bring this to something like 64 and run this simulation again, you'll notice the change in the fire here. And obviously one thing you'll definitely notice right off the bat is that the time it takes to calculate this is going to dramatically increase based on how much you increase these divisions. But you can see that as we increase those divisions, we're getting a higher resolution in the actual flame effect here, and we're starting to see some of these flames sort of wisp around here and just get a little bit more of a detailed flame effect. And you can increase this really as much as you want, but obviously keep in mind that the higher this goes, it's going to dramatically decrease the amount of viewport performance that you have as it's running through the simulation. Now another thing that we can adjust is under here, under the smoke flames tab, we have this reaction option. So the speed actually determines really the size of the flame. So actually a higher value means a smaller flame. So if we typed in a value of something like 2 and then ran this simulation by pressing Alt A, and we'll wait till it gets sort of in view, and then we'll pause it and then find our drone here. You can see that already that fire simulation is much, much smaller here than it was before. And this might be something you're looking for where we have a very small little flame sort of flickering on the back of the engine And obviously, if you decrease this to something like 0.1 and run the simulation again, the flame is going to be much larger. So it kind of just depends on what you're actually going for and what look you're going for. We'll probably actually keep this set to maybe around a value of 0.8 or so. And we can run this again, press Alt-A, and take a look at our simulation. So that's looking really, really nice right there. Now, one thing we can go ahead and do is we could take a look at what this simulation is actually going to look like if we were to render it. So what we'll do is just change our viewport shading to the rendered mode and give it a moment to calculate. And you'll notice that when we do that, we don't really see any type of fire effect. We see a little bit of this sort of wispy smoke, but we don't see any of that flame. And that's because we need to actually adjust the material for this flame simulation inside the node editor. So let's go ahead and change the viewport shading back to solid. So what we'll go ahead and do is in the next clip, we'll adjust the nodes for this actual simulation so that we can get the fire to actually appear inside the render. So we'll go ahead and do that in the next clip.